He or she who knows others is wise, and he who knows himself or herself is enlightened. And that's by Lao Tzu. I'll say it right so it's not confusing. He who knows others is wise. He who knows himself is enlightened. So, welcome again to the Profitable Photographer. In case you don't know, lucydumascoaching.com is my website. You can find the podcast and you can learn more about me. If you're wanting some support, feel free to just click on the create a 20-minute chat, and I'd love to connect with you. No pressure, no obligation. I just love to support people. That's my passion. So I'm so happy that my guest today, Anj Olson, we finally found a time to get together. She is a master photographer, and her studio is Anj Portrait Studios. She's in Des Moines, Iowa, and she has a BA in fine arts and nutritional science, which I'm not sure if that helps in photography, but maybe it does. And then she decided after graduation to become a photographer, and she specializes in tangible fine art for her clients. Ooh, I love that. I'm going to ask her more what she means by tangible fine art or how she communicates that. Her work is influenced by her experiences as a mama to three sons, Wes Anderson movies, interesting, and her voracious appetite for books. And Angie, I want to talk books after this recording is done.
Yes, please.
Yes, yes. I've started once I discovered the iPad and the free library apps, the cloud library where I can blow it up. I can sit on my porch, read my books for free. I've gone back to being a big reader. So, all right. So, hello.
Hi, I am so happy to be here. Thank you for reaching out.
You're welcome. I'm not sure who said you need to have Ange on this show, but I'm so glad for the referral. And we were both at the imaging, but we only we crossed most paths because there's like 10,000 people there. But there was a
Yeah.
moment where we got to see each other in person.
Yep. And in that tiny moment, I was like, ooh, this is going to be fantastic. I love her so much. So
Uh,
that's all I needed.
I felt that too, like soul sisters.
Yes.
So, how long ago did you start doing photography, and what was the like, boom, this is what I want to do with my life moment?
Yeah. I started, gosh, probably around the age of 7 or 8. My grandfather and father both love photography. And it was something that was, I think, definitely more of a hobby for both of them. My grandpa was a botanist, my dad a biochemist, and I just loved storytelling. And I think that goes along with the love
Mm,
of books. It was it was fun to capture moments. It was fun to see things through a camera. The other side of this, and I don't know if you can relate to this, is yes, I mean I love people and all that, but there's something about being behind a camera that lets you escape a little. You get to
yes.
observe.
Hmm.
And even as a child and getting older, I loved that. I loved that I could disappear but still be present in an
Hmm.
odd way.
Yeah. I remember
Um,
realizing at parties, um, I would bring my camera just for fun. And it was such an easy way to connect and or be distanced.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I loved that. And then it got to college, and I really wanted to do an art degree. And my dad said, yes, you can do an art degree, but only if you do a science degree alongside, like with it. And you would think this would be a punishment, but I adore science. I adore art. Those are
Mm,
two sides of me that are just, they go hand in hand. So I ended up doing both and then getting an internship at Kraft, like the mac and cheese place,
wow.
as a
Okay.
microbiologist.
Oh, wow.
And at the end of this internship, they offered me a job. And it was that moment that I all of a sudden realized you cannot work in a lab the rest of your life.
Mm,
It was the moment was there and it was a hard no. And that was it. And then it was, I'm going to be a photographer.
And you listened to that because I think a lot of people will get that voice but be too afraid. So how did you overcome the fear, or were you just like, yeah, let's go for it and no fear?
There was definitely fear. I think the fear was on the other side, though. My fear was that I would commit to being a microbiologist and make the kind of money that they were offering me and
Ah,
never.
yeah.
Because I remember my dad saying, well, why don't you work there for a year and earn the money to transition to
Mhm.
photography? And I like money and I like being
I
profitable.
like money too.
Yes. And so there was a moment where I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get used to that
Hmm.
and enjoy that. And am I going to be able to give it up to be a photographer?
Right.
And I think I knew in myself that I would not. So that's where
Interesting.
it was.
Yeah. I worked at the airport in San Diego for 7 years, and I watched some of the most amazing, talented, creative, bright people be stuck because it used to be a really good job to even just work at the ticket counter or checking people in for the flights. Great
Yeah.
benefits, the pay was good. And so they were afraid. One of my best friends could have been the most incredible interior designer, but she retired, so that I saw that same thing. And so I decided, like my mom kept saying, why didn't you get a job with an airline instead of insurance? And I was like, I just want to make enough money that I can pay for my own flights and travel wherever I want to go and not get stuck here. So
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Yes.
So that
And
is,
having parents that support you in that or that enjoy what you do. I had a set of parents that were both, I mean, they were scared for me, for
mhm.
sure, but they also had full faith. I don't know how many times my mom said, you should not be, you are a storyteller, you are a journalist
Aw,
or which I really took to heart. When you have someone that believes in you that way, you're like, no, I can do this,
yeah.
you know.
So I see that, and that's incredible. And I think there are not that many people that have that kind of support, or maybe they just don't talk about it. But it's like either end of the spectrum, someone that can say, yes, you can do it, or no, you can't do it, can be really helpful. Do you
Oh,
know what I
that's such a
mean?
good point. Equal motivation, different,
Yes.
yeah, different perspectives, but that is such a good point.
Yeah. I had a lot of people saying, you're crazy. It's too competitive. And I was just like, watch me. I believe in me. I
Yes.
know I can make this work. And so I love that. I
And
love
here
that.
you are.
And and here you are. Here we all are.
Yeah, yeah,
All right. So today's main topic is something I, in my almost 300 episodes, have never had a conversation about. And it's about self-portraits. And uh, so give me a little intro to self-portraits and
yeah.
why, why?
Well, the reason self-portraits came on my radar was hugely from a therapeutic standpoint. And feel free to interrupt at any point. But when I had my third child, his name is Caspian, we had an incredibly traumatic birth experience. It was a near-death experience. He was in the NICU for a few weeks. All that to say, what came out of that was me having a lot of unresolved feelings and kind of not really finding a great outlet for those feelings.
Mm,
I tried therapy, didn't really love a lot of the therapists that I met. It was hard for me to connect. And then we just moved on with life. And then COVID hit, and he was a year old,
mm,
and all three boys came home. And something about me is, yes, holy moly, I love being a mom, but I am equally fueled by art and I need it all. I am not someone I wouldn't be described as an entirely content human being. I'm
hmm.
constantly seeking challenge in every aspect of my life. And self-portraiture became my haven, my escape during this time because the kids were all home and I was homeschooling. And don't ask my son about that, my oldest, because he'll say you were not teaching, mom. You just sat around and drank coffee. Incorrect. There was teaching. But my husband would often say, here, take this whiskey, go in the studio, come back in whenever you're ready.
Mm,
And not a lot of clients because it was kind of right when COVID started. There was a lot of fear, not sure what was going on, how we were reacting. And I realized that there is so much power in exploring feelings without words
mm,
and using light and shadow and color harmony and the background of books, just storytelling to be able to put maybe emotions that you're not able to get in touch with via words, or you're not ready to talk about them, but you're ready to put them into something visual.
mm. Wow.
And as an artist, it was incredibly healing. Yeah, so that's kind of where my self-portrait journey began.
So, what kind of images were you making? Studio, location? Like, tell me.
It was all studio to begin with. I've done some on location, but it's been mainly studio. This was when it was like winter here.
Hmm.
So on top of, everything that was going on, there was this kind of bleakness going on
Hmm.
outside as well. So it began with a lot of, okay, how am I feeling? How do I depict what I'm feeling? So it started with an Alice in Wonderland series of
Mm.
me being trapped, me being large, me being, just all of this. And in all honesty, all of these images took a dark turn because I wasn't able to. If anyone meets me, I think they would describe me as incredibly joyful. I am
Yes.
not really someone you would describe as dark or anything like that. But all of my self-portraits lean much darker.
Mm.
And I think it's hugely, I mean, I value every emotion is a valid emotion. And I think it is really difficult to be described as something and feel as though that means you shouldn't be something else.
Okay,
And
say that again in a different way.
oh gosh, you're
Or just
challenging
say
me.
it.
Um, when you're put in a box, as in I'm being told I'm happy all the time, or I'm being told I'm joyful. But does that mean that I can't also be sad or melancholy or angry, or I mean, even further, just furious?
Hmm.
And I think my imagery is where that came out. And by dark, I even mean going the direction of ghostly or almost fearful. I think I had a few questions during this time with people just messaging me and saying, "Are you okay?" And wanting to share this on my portrait Instagram and all that because I wanted to be, I think I wanted to be very open with this is also who I am.
Mm.
And that's okay. And normalizing, like, yeah, I can share these beautiful images of children. I can also be an artist and share this.
Right, right. Wow.
And branding maybe told me otherwise, but uh,
Branding, you said?
yes,
Yeah.
they tell you don't show this, don't show that. And at some point you're kind of like, you know what? I am these two people and this is what you're going to get.
Mhm.
Yeah, so my images were very dark and they still, I think, tend to lean that direction
Yeah.
with self-portraiture for sure.
Yeah. Do you know Christy Elias Sutton?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So yeah, she's from California and she pretty much took the world by storm with her photography that
Ah,
is very dark and intriguing and um, mystical and wild, especially at first. And she's just this beautiful, positive, blonde, tall, statuesque woman. Yes, maybe she does wear black a lot, I think, but something comes out of her in her work that I'm guessing she would relate to what you just said.
yes, and her work feels very storytelling.
Very.
You
Yeah,
look
yeah.
at it and you think, I mean, you think novel or, that old world
Yes.
feel to it that I love.
She gets a lot of her inspiration from movies, but
Mm,
like dark movies, like moody, graphic kinds of things.
yeah, it has a Game of Thrones feel to it,
Yeah.
which
Where do
I
you get
love
your
that show.
inspiration?
All books, all books. I love historical fiction. I honestly don't have a genre that is a favorite. I'm one of those people that I, and as a book lover, I'm curious your thoughts on this, but I truly think you can learn from any book that you read. You get a
Hmm.
new perspective, and so much of your life is spent in this tiny little experience of what your life is.
Hmm.
And I appreciate that books can take you entirely out of that and teach you
Yes.
something new.
Yes. So many. Like, have you read The Weight of Ink?
No.
Oh, well,
Oh, I'm so excited.
learn so much.
I love a new book recommendation.
It's in two, um, and it could inspire something. Okay, it starts in England in a house, and they find documents under the stairs that go back to Shakespeare times, but Jewish writings
Oh
that
my
were
gosh.
hidden.
I'm
And,
already so
and so
excited.
you learn about the history of Jews in Europe at the beginning. Then you go back to the writers and you learn about that time and the plague and like I feel like I've lived through different times. And when I hear, oh, there's the plague, I'm like, yeah, I know what that's like. So
That
yeah,
was such a beautiful way to put that. And I can't say it again. I don't know what you said, but I
I
think
don't
you
either.
said it's as though you lived through that or you're connected to whatever you said. I could relate to it so well.
Yes.
That
And
is
something,
what,
sorry.
yeah.
And
No,
something
I was
fun
agreeing.
that I love on my iPad is now when I read something about a place, then I
Mhm.
look it up or I look up whatever the city was in the 1600s and I look up the maps or I look up, if they're like so and so was the king at that time, I look up
Yeah.
that. So it's anyway,
I
if I
love that
were
layering.
inspired by that little addition of being able to look it up would be very cool. Okay, so I
Yeah.
just had an idea that it popped in my head of a self-portrait looking like the queen that was just mentioned in a book I just read. Is that the kind of
Yes.
thing?
Yes. Yep. Often that, looking at the moods of a book.
Mm,
Have you read The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue?
yes, yes,
Okay,
yes.
that is one of my favorite books. And I loved her shifting through identities as she progressed in life.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I don't want to say anything in case people haven't read it. I hate spoiling books, but
Yeah, so good.
I think there was something about the dark presence in that book,
Hmm.
her responding, the communities that she was involved with, but the feelings at the end of that book prompted a self-portrait.
Ah, awesome.
And sometimes it's just the feeling you're left. The best books make me feel all the things. I
Oh
mean, I've
yeah.
read books, I've gotten mad at characters, so mad at characters, these
Hmm.
characters don't exist.
Yeah,
But in my brain, they are so alive.
right.
And I think that's an aspect that translates to my photography where I want to capture those emotions and
Mm,
they're exhibited in a self-portrait in a way where I want someone to look at it. And if they feel fear or they feel anger or they're like, what's wrong? Then my mission has been accomplished. I want you to look at that and feel something.
I love that. I love that. Have you read Midnight Circus?
I
Okay,
think
that's a
I'm confusing it with Midnight Library. So no,
yes.
no.
Okay. That one will create imagery for you that you
Oh my gosh.
will explode because it's a circus that's only at night, at the midnight, and it's dark and it's spooky and it's wild and it's
Oh, ooh,
like
that kind of gave me
nothing. The
goosebumps.
imagery never leaves you. So yeah, we'll just talk books and if anyone else wants to listen. But
I know.
that
Yeah.
really excites me because when I think of self-portrait, I think, what I do? Do you see my body language? If
Yes.
people
You
are
slump.
watching on YouTube,
Yes.
it
Yeah.
overwhelmed. But I
Yeah.
can see having just finished oh my gosh, what was it called? Anyway, I just finished an amazing book and I could see how the characters in that I could be inspired to do something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a creative challenge. I think
Hmm.
I see it as playtime. Um, and it has in the past been incredibly linked to emotion. And I think my challenge for 2025 is to find a way to exit from that emotion to where self-portraiture becomes a creative practice.
Mm,
Because it's so linked to emotion that sometimes I find that I struggle to be creative in a self-portrait if I'm not feeling something incredibly heavy.
okay.
But I don't want to be held back by that. I want to be able to play in a self-portrait and not feel all of a sudden like, oh, what is my impetus if I don't have emotion? So there are things actively that have started to come into my life. Like Fridays are my play day.
Okay.
So Friday afternoons are self-portrait play day, and it becomes much more almost clinical. So, okay, you write a bunch of words, and I write these words throughout the week. And it's just things I'm feeling, things I'm thinking. It can be random. And then I put all the words into a little whatever. And on Friday, I pull out a word. And that word
Oh,
becomes the start. And then it's okay, you reach into, and then it's color, but you don't get to pick the color, you pick a color, so
okay.
it's, you end up getting this scaffolding for a self-portrait.
Ah,
And then the next step is, okay, you have the word, you have the color. Now, what is the one prop? Which I really dislike the word prop. What's the one storytelling element or something? And sometimes you end up with the just things you're like, what am I supposed to do with this?
hmm.
I have not done this very often because it's been conferences and all that up until
Hmm.
now. But it's something that's going to be very prevalent this year to be able to harness, have some rules and be able to harness creativity in a different way, because it can be overwhelming to think, okay, great, I'm going to do a self-portrait. Now what? Like, where do I
Right,
start?
right.
And having a word, a color, and a prop are three things that can just immediately give you a starting point. And who cares if it's terrible? Because
Yeah.
that's another thing. I'm a perfectionist. I want everything to be just the most brilliantly artistic thing.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
sometimes that's not the point. Sometimes the point is just to get out of your comfort zone and try something so that you can start to access different creative spaces of yourself.
I love it. I love it. I am a part of a women's photography group. We've been meeting 35 years.
Oh my gosh.
And it started when the world was so male focused in photography that we weren't getting our needs met professionally. So we started a group.
Yep.
And then as things changed, we said, oh, why don't we just do creative stuff or, Photoshop classes to improve our skills and get away from the business part. And so we're
Yep.
always looking for new ideas for things to do. And I love that idea that we could maybe even help each other by taking the picture, but we style it ourselves.
Yes.
Mm. So yeah, that
I love that.
gives me an idea. So the thing that always throws me off, because I can look even when I was a very much smaller and younger woman, I can look old and fat, or I can look young and thin, depending on posing and lighting and things like that. So one of
Yep.
my little worries would be, okay, if I'm taking the picture myself and I can't see myself, um, how do I navigate, lighting and expression and so forth. Just like it's hard for people to take good family pictures where they set it up and then run in on a timer
For
because
sure.
that moment that you click is the one in general where you see everything in that, 1/25th of a second come
Yeah.
together. So how
Yep.
do you navigate that?
Yes, that is a great question. So, one, the lighting is set the entire time. It is not moved until I'm done with whatever I'm doing in that moment. Secondly, I use interval timer on my camera. I don't like remotes because it ends up where you're always clicking at the wrong time. You don't have enough time to get your hands in the right place. Even if it's on a 3 second delay on a remote, you still have to constantly reset yourself.
Ah,
And I think that interrupts creative flow immensely.
right.
So interval timer, I set it on my camera to shoot every 5 seconds. And I have masking tape, and I will move throughout my scene for 15 shots.
Okay.
So the camera goes off 15 times every 5 seconds. And then I will mark where I was in each of those. Like when I take the shot, I put a masking tape. So when I look through my shots, I'm looking at it and I'm seeing, okay, don't like that pose, but I like where my lighting was here. I like the emotion that was
Mhm.
happening when I took that shot. So then I know I go back to that and I'm like, okay, this is where I liked what I was looking. Okay, I don't like that the fabric wrapped itself around this way. Or so now when I finish, then my entire goal is to complete that one shot. So I'm in that same location. The next time will be 15 shots, but in that one location that I liked from the previous. So
So,
it kind of,
so
yeah.
just a little clarification. So
Yep.
it's every 5 seconds, but every 5 seconds you also put masking tape
So the
down?
first round that I do it, it's not to get the shot, it's to move in my scene
Ah,
to be able to see where I like
the light
what I'm
and the
doing.
positioning
Yes.
and what you're doing. Got it.
Yep. So that's when I will just stand, do that. So then once I have my position proper, the next time it is, okay, this is where I'm going to be. Am I jumping? I love jumping. I love movement. Movement in general, I think conveys so much emotion. If it's fabric, I want it whipping. I want
Mhm.
extreme. And then you think, okay, great. I have my lighting set. Do I want to introduce blur? So because I have my lighting set, I can dial down everything to where I want it to be able to introduce that. Do I want multiple exposure? Then it's playing, that's the next step. So it's a bunch of layers of you set your foundation,
Mhm.
and you go to the next thing, and then you finalize and finalize. But my goal is never 20 images. My goal is 3
Mhm.
at the most, because I have something very specific I'm trying to convey. And it's then my artist side and my storytelling side attempting to come into this point of, okay, this is what I wanted.
And I also think your scientific side,
Yes, that is
because
true.
you're breaking it down into steps and like uh, whatever analysis and getting rid of the theories that don't work. Or I mean,
Yes.
I'm sure there's scientific talk that could explain this better than I am, but
Yes, it's like the hypothesis and all of that. You know, you start with an idea and then you move on to finalizing it and
yes. Or this
proving
doesn't
it.
work, so let's try this other chemical, or oh, this chemical got that, so now what if we add a little of this? So yeah,
Exactly.
that just that side of
Exactly.
your brain, I can imagine the scientific side being able to break it down into those steps rather than just random, you know, turn on some lights, take some pictures, hope for the best. You're really
Yeah.
exploring, um, just like when I'm photographing, say, a family, if you're watching on YouTube, this family in the arch back there. So I start out with them standing there and I take a few pictures and then I have them move a little bit, maybe, you know, look at each other, look at the camera, put your toe here,
Exactly.
certain emotions. Like I, I'm not like I have a problem when like in this group we're talking about, or I mentioned we might each get a turn. We did horses with their riders, and we had
Uh-huh.
15 minutes with each horse. And for me, that it was hard to get that rapport, that connection, that exact space. It's a step-by-step process. So what I'm hearing is it's very similar with your self-portraits, is the
Yep.
you figured out a way to like chunk it down. And then I imagine, and you tell me about, is there a certain point when then you just kind of get free to then do the creative part, or at what
Yeah.
point does that make sense?
Yes, for sure. I think once all that scaffolding exists, once you get past the I'm figuring things out,
Mm-hmm.
then it is pure playtime.
Mm.
And that's where the magic really happens. That's where and sometimes that can be an hour and a half to 2 hours in.
Wow.
Like you've just been working and working and you're thinking, man, this isn't working. And then, or pure accident, a light doesn't fire.
Hmm.
And you look at it and you're like, oh my gosh, that's what I wanted. And I didn't realize it.
Fun.
But it is, and when you were talking about family photography, when I'm photographing clients, the first 10 to 15 minutes of any session are usually not great images.
Hmm.
Usually that is simply getting them used to being in front of the camera. I'm tweaking things, I'm noticing. And I think that's very true for self portraits. The first 15 to 20 minutes, you're going to look at these images and be like, oh my gosh, happening? Like, what was I thinking? This is
I
terrible.
suck. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And you are just, and then you all of a sudden see one image that you're like, oh, that's interesting. I kind of like that.
Hmm.
And then you do it a little more and you're like, oh my gosh, I really like that. And you also stop looking at yourself as yourself. You start
Mm.
looking at yourself as art.
Mm.
And I think that's so important. Like you start to look at yourself as a part of a composition,
Hmm.
versus like, oh, I look this way, or what's my face doing, or this and that. And you will notice those things, but they're not as gut wrenching or as strong of a feeling. Instead, it's okay, great. I just need to turn my face a little bit, and then it's fine. But there is really something about creating self portraits that make you realize that you can be art.
Mm. So you answered one of my big questions is that insecurity, how you get past the insecurity, is what I'm hearing is if you do this and you allow plenty of time, that's the other thing I've heard from you is
Yeah.
don't be rushed, set it an undistracted time, and that as you do it, you'll detach from that uh, personal, self-critical self and start to see yourself as art, as
Yeah.
your subject rather than you, maybe.
Absolutely. And think of how you treat your clients, because I think I was so, it took me a lot of time to recover from that third birth. I mean,
Mm.
emergency C-section, my abs it was all just not great. And I was so, so, so insecure about my belly.
Mm.
Like it was definitely not something, I mean, it wasn't something I could look at a picture and just disregard. It
Right.
was too deep for me.
Hmm.
But what I also realized was then acknowledge that. If you have an insecurity that is that deep, then so for the longest time, I wore all the, clothing that really helped me feel good. So
Hmm.
that wasn't something that was showing up, or that I used fabric in creative ways. There are certain things that were just really too much of an insecurity for me to not feel terrible about for a while.
Hmm.
And I thought a lot of my thought process was, well, how would I help a client with that? I would factor in those insecurities and I would light differently.
Right.
I would suggest clothing that helps with that. I would suggest patterns. I would pose differently. So it was almost like looking at myself and thinking, okay, great. This is something you're not comfortable with. And seeing it in the camera is probably going to make you feel feelings that are really hard for you.
Hmm.
That's both a good thing, but also you don't have to torture yourself.
Hmm.
Let's help you to get to a place where it's not as hard.
So I hear a combination of there's potential for some self-acceptance, and at the same time, you you can flatter yourself in ways that doesn't take your attention to what you're not comfortable with.
For sure.
Yes, just like when I'm trying on clothes, there's certain things where I look like it's just no.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
it just shows off everything I don't want to notice. And even if I'm home all day by myself and it's just me seeing myself in the mirror, I don't want to see that because that's where my eye will go. Whereas
Yeah.
something that makes me feel good, look cute, uh, it's a yes for me. So
Yeah.
I love that it's just like with our clients. Like I've seen people in Facebook groups say, "Oh, you shouldn't change them at all or do any Photoshop or anything people are just how they are. And it's like, yes, but this is a two-dimensional
Mhm.
product of a
Yeah,
three-dimensional world.
right.
So I there's no this is how you look for real if it's not, and even with film videos, depending on the lighting, depending on the focal length, we're going to look different. So
Absolutely.
yeah. So okay, I think I've covered the first set of questions, and I don't want to run out of time, but I want to find out, how does this benefit business?
Yes, great question. And it was actually a surprise to me because I think I had mentioned before just, that branding aspect of combining cute children with very dark self-portraiture. But my self-portraiture displayed that I could do creative work outside of what my normal was.
Mm,
It showed people that I could be creative with lighting, I could be creative with color. I'm not photographing children the way I do my self portraits. So, or families. But what that opened up was individuals who wanted to be seen that way, who
mm,
wanted to be photographed in a storytelling way. I believe maybe 4 months into me posting self portraits, I had a huge influx of branding inquiries,
mm,
album covers, authors who didn't just want a headshot. They wanted a full, they wanted to be seen the way I was seeing myself.
mm,
I had a lot of women that booked me for almost a kind of like the I'm 40 and I want a photo shoot, but not simply a glamour shoot. It was, I want to be weird. And I really, really enjoyed that. And the inquiries have not stopped since I started posting those. It has gone hugely into people just wanting their story told visually. And it's almost like a high school senior shoot for an
hmm.
adult woman.
Yeah.
And that's been really fun because they're open to, I get to have this in-depth conversation with them, asking them, what are your goals? How are you feeling? What is the message you're trying to convey? What are your favorite movies? What are you insecure about? What are you upset about? What are you happy about? What brings you joy? What are goals you have in life? And it's a conversation like we're having,
Hmm.
but that translates into me getting to hear layers of who they are and then spending 3 hours with them and creating beautiful images.
Hmm.
And I never would have been able to do that or have that type of business and that type of income coming in if I hadn't explored self-portraiture.
So are these premium priced? Is there a an initial investment that really makes sure that your time is well
Yeah.
paid for?
Yep. So at this point, what it is for like a hour and a half session, hour and a half to 2 hours, we have a planning appointment and then it's a $2,000. Like that's the entry level.
Hmm.
And then it includes like 8 to 10 digital images. Everything above that is paid for additionally.
Hmm.
Um, my studio does not focus on digital images at all. We had mentioned tangible art. My family, children, and all of that is portraits, albums, digital images at the end of the line. Um, but with the branding sessions, I wanted an opportunity to be creative. And as of now, it's been hard to convince isn't the right word. I haven't had a lot of clients that are comfortable with putting a portrait of themselves on the wall.
Mm.
And I'm trying to normalize that.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I have no issues putting portraits of myself on the wall because I'm like, I want my kids to see all sorts of art and
Right.
understand that you can value yourself.
Hmm.
And that's a beautiful thing.
So
Yeah.
there there are um there are ways to handle that objection that I've been very successful with.
Yes.
Um,
I would
you
love
know,
to hear about this.
yeah, yeah. So first of all, I talk about that I'm not suggesting they put that in the living room over the fireplace,
Mm-hmm.
but that portraits of ourselves individually are silent self-esteem builders. And having it large enough that we can pick the emotion up at a distance, and maybe you just put it in your bedroom or in a
Mm-hmm.
hallway somewhere. Um, Now, of course, when it's more like boudoir, we're talking about images where someone feels beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you might do images of someone where they're more moody and it's not about their beauty, but um, I don't know. I just don't take no for an answer. And
Yeah.
then do you do projection sales for your fine art
Yes.
in person?
Yep.
Yeah.
And
So,
yeah, and that, like hearing you say this, that I'm curious, and this is me just conjecturing, if I were to approach my branding sessions in the same way that I approach my fine art, how differently they would go.
mhm,
Because as I got into this, I think I was more surprised at the influx than I
mhm.
was prepared.
Ah,
And that because I didn't anticipate that my self-portraiture would bring in that. I was just like, oh, I'm sharing, you know what, this is who I am. I want people to know who I am.
right, right.
And as I entered that, yeah, it's been more of a surprise than a preparation.
Yeah, and it's all the beautiful thing about this industry is we keep growing and changing like a kaleidoscope, and then there's new
Mm-hmm.
challenges because you know how to turn a family portrait or child's portrait into wall art, but there's a little something that seems like, oh, this is maybe different, but
Yeah.
really not. Now, if I was doing it, I would include one image up to a certain size as
Mm.
part of it. So I might say up to a 20 by 24. Now, if you want it as a wallet, that's fine too. But if you listen to my how I do my sales sessions,
Mm-hmm.
one of my things that used to be the only way to show a size is I have boards, um, white boards cut in all kinds of sizes.
Okay.
So during the sales session, I get up and I hold a board in front of an image that is a really strong art. And
Mm-hmm.
something happens in the brain. And when they see it like it's finished art, there's this click. Oh. And so something that really captures something that you've loved from when you're editing and letting them see it like it's already done. And then talking about, is there a space, this is art that you've commissioned from an artist. This isn't an ego portrait to but at the same time I if I'm doing portraits of individual women, I kind of get into the psychology of celebrating ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I, i'd love to I'd love to have one of your gals and just pretend what am I trying to say? I'd love to be you
I
for
think
a
I
while
hear what you're saying.
and
Yeah.
see
Yes.
see some of that because and also I talked to them about how much I think this was my secret sauce. So there's a beautiful portrait of me when I was um I, Bruce Hudson came down. I don't know if you know him.
Mm-hmm.
He came down to teach a class, and I won an auction prize of being his subject for one of them. And this portrait of me is this beautiful piece of art. He used it in his studio as a sample, and it captures my essence. And
Mm.
I've told clients that those days when I feel like the lowest piece of gum on the bottom of someone's shoe, and then my eye falls on this, I remember who I am.
Oh, that's a beautiful story.
Just like when my little niece was a teenager and I started thinking, oh, I don't know if I like her anymore, because teenager.
That
And then I
age, yes.
see the portrait and I'd be like, oh no, that's who she is. That's the real her. So again, storytelling,
Yeah.
I would bring up an image. I would talk about an image that I took if I was you,
Hmm.
um, that every day, year after year, it still gives you confidence. It still reminds you of your own value.
Yeah.
Um, the older we get, the younger we are in pictures, right?
Yeah. Oh,
So being able to remember, times when I think, oh gosh, uh, which, by the way, last night I dreamed that somebody told me I was a beautiful woman. So, I love it. Anyway, so when I see these pictures of me younger and at my best, large, there's this comfort in that. There's this positivity rather
yeah.
than thinking, oh, I wish I looked like that. So, yeah, so that's some of the things that I would work on. And
I
the,
really enjoy that. Because it's also, again, it's a challenge.
mhm,
I appreciate that. And I very much thank you for that insight. I think you've kind of given me a little bit of a framework, like I was talking about for, okay, the next person I have that comes through, I'm going to approach it like that. Let's see what happens. Because
yeah,
I do believe in everything you're saying. It's not I hear you and it's not a sales gimmick. It's true.
no, yeah,
It's 100% true. I look at past images, just from 10 years ago and all that, and you see it. And I think that is me. I'm not that same person and I will never be that same person. But I'm looking at myself and that is you do get this moment of just, oh, that's me.
yeah,
That person is in me. And I think there's I don't know, it's a beautiful thing.
yeah. And we go through so many iterations of ourselves in
Hmm.
life.
Yeah.
And also then, there is the factor of like when I put something on Facebook that's me from a long time ago, and my nieces and nephews see that, and they're like, "Dang, Auntie, look at you." Um, it helps them understand because I think I think when we're younger, we don't realize that when we see people older, how many thems they have been
Oh my
before that
gosh.
moment.
Yeah.
And it in digital files are going to melt away like snow,
Hmm.
but something tangible. Um, I still I had portraits taken in my mid 30s when boudoir was all lingerie and boas and pinup style.
Yeah.
And he did some that were also really nice portraits of me. And I still have some of those out. And would I if I only had digital files? I wouldn't know where those were. But it reminds me every day, oh yeah, girl.
Yeah. You still got that.
Yeah. Or if it was something like the work that you've done with yourself, I can imagine it being moments when you see those where you ponder the you
Hmm.
that was at that phase in your life and where you are now
Yeah,
and the journey you've been on.
for sure.
So, yeah. So,
Yeah.
okay, I can't wait to hear the future
I
results.
know you will be getting a message as soon as this happens.
Good, good.
I
Yeah,
can't.
if I sold digitals, I would always include a set of proofs and at least one largish image as a bonus. If they don't want it, they don't have to have it.
Yeah,
But
it's so hard to imagine someone wouldn't want it, isn't it? Like
yeah,
just,
and it
yeah,
costs so little to
yeah.
make a, regular 20 by 24
Hmm.
and 25 by 7s. It
Yes.
costs very little.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, but the sitting down, I'm glad that you sit down with them. Um, and I hope you're using a movie screen and a projector because it's really hard to show a 40-inch high print on a television or
It is. I have a television in here, but it's a gigantic frame TV. It's
Okay.
one
How
of those
tall?
that
How
it's
tall is it?
it's a 75
Wide.
right now.
So maybe it's
5
36
wide,
tall.
maybe.
Yeah. Still, I love that there's something so tangible about a projector, and I'm not telling you to
There
go
is.
change everything
No,
and
I
sell
used
your
to have a
television.
projector. We switched when I built the new studio because we just
Yeah.
couldn't keep that projector in the same spot.
Yeah. 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 But
I
yes,
love
at
the
least you've got a
projector though.
big TV so you can sell it. You can show it large in both directions.
Yeah,
Anyhow, I'm kind of digressing because it's one of my little,
I know. And I'm
yeah.
still kind of sad I don't have the projector because that's what I always used, a projector and
Ah,
a giant screen.
mhm.
Loved it. And the other issue I didn't have, which I do have with the TV, is color. I hate the color.
Yeah.
And it doesn't pick up shadows as well. It just has I'm still figuring it out and I'm not super happy with it.
Mm, mm,
So you're saying things that are like, ooh,
yeah.
I don't
Okay.
love it either.
Yes. Okay, let's see. So benefits the business. I bet even like I've used this example a lot, but back in the olden days, there was this trend for black and white photographs that had some hand coloring
Oh
on it.
yeah.
Like there might be a
Mhm.
hat with flowers of a kid, and you color in the flowers
Yep.
and you color in their cheeks and
I
things.
remember those.
And I booked a lot of clients because I showed that, but they almost
Yeah.
never wanted it once they saw the rich black and white as is
Mm,
and the color, because we would always do a combo.
yeah.
Maybe they'd do one 11 by 14 where I did a little spot color.
Hmm.
Um, but it helped me book is the moral of that story. So
Yes.
doing these self-portraits, even for people who are hiring you for a children's portrait or a family portrait, it shows that you're an artist. And
Yes.
that positioning is so strong, uh, or such a strong way to have the more luxury kind of business. Would you
Hmm.
agree? Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree completely. And I think that's, when you go to the language of you are commissioning me to be an artist, there's an expert, level that comes with that where people they want to see that you are an artist.
Hmm.
So context wise, I think there's so much about, you're doing it for yourself as well as for other people. This is a part of who I am, who my business is. Being an artist is in every aspect of what I do, whether it's your family photography, whether it's self-portraiture, whether it's this. And I think that also goes into the way the way my family is displayed.
Hmm.
The way it's not, I love the way you're saying this because it's such a foundational thing, being an artist.
Right, right.
And to be able to display that in multiple ways to validate for your clients. Um, and I think there has to be a history of it. It took a while for my social media, my website, and everything to really match up to where you're figuring things out. And then all of a sudden you realize, and I've been working a lot with Greg Daniel.
Oh, yeah. So,
Love him, love his work.
mhm.
And one of the things he said to me very early on was, you have so much noise.
Mm,
Your social media is full of noise. But what is your ultimate message? Like,
mm,
what are you trying to say? Because by simply posting pretty pictures, you're telling people, this is what I do, pretty pictures.
hmm.
And that is great, but your product is not pretty pictures.
Right.
Your product is art. So sell art.
Mm,
And it was such a straightforward thing to say, and hard for me to switch because we live in a world, especially, being, I didn't grow up on social media, but it entered in my 20s and everything is pretty pictures. Instagram
mhm.
is about pretty pictures, websites are pretty pictures. Um, and adding in self-portrait to alongside framed art and all that was an element of validation, I think, of yes, I am an artist and
Yeah.
this is what I provide,
Right.
not just pretty pictures.
Right. So what I hear is a sense of confidence that emerged from that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And you always have a subject available. You don't have to go hire
Yes,
models.
exactly. And it truly is so therapeutic. I don't know how many times I am crawling out of my skin in the house just because, I'm a mom. My boys are 10, 8, and 6. The
Oh,
house is a mess. There's a football being thrown in every single room. It doesn't matter if it's the kitchen. I mean, everything. There are blankets from forts everywhere, books. And I don't want to tell them to always clean up. This
right.
is our home. Like, be creative in our home.
Hmm.
But yes, there are moments where I am just going insane. I want headphones, I want out. And it is so therapeutic to come in here and just play.
Mm,
And whether it results in a masterpiece or not, it just takes a weight off.
I love
It
it.
does something.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Love it. Love it. Okay. So we're almost out of time. So I have two questions. So how do people get in touch with you? How do they see your work? If they want to ask you a question. So
Yeah.
give us
Um,
the info.
Mostly through either my website,
Which is
anjportraitstudio.com. There's like a chat box, and then I can get email addresses, names and all of that just so I can respond. Or I love just an email at hello@anjportraitstudio.com.
so website is ANJ Portrait
Yep.
Studio.
Yes.com.
Great. And so last question, either is there something that you would feel like, oh, I wish I'd have mentioned that, or is the parting thought you want to leave us with?
I think the main thing specifically with self-portraits and exploration and play, we live in a world where I think everyone feels like they have to be an expert or they have to have everything figured out before you do something. And I think self-portraiture is a space where you can let go, you can play, there are no rules. You just get to be better at your craft. You
Mm,
can try one light, two lights, three lights. You can mess up royally. Um, and the thing is it the more you do it, it bleeds into other things you do. You end up trying a new lighting system with families or with children because you remember that you did it with a self-portrait and it was fantastic. Um, it allows you to try new things. I mean, I'm going into Photoshop painting and oil painting and all of that because I'm realizing that trying things and failing is okay.
mm,
And self-portraiture really gave me a space to try and fail and just keep going.
I
And
love
that is, I think failure is essential to growth in all ways.
that's big. Truth, truth bomb.
Yes, please fail. Fail today.
Fail today, fail a lot.
Yes,
Best not to do it with a paying client. So,
exactly. Fail with yourself.
yes, you get to make all those boo-boos uh, danger-free.
Yes,
Well,
exactly.
It,
My full name is Anjana.
Anjana, I love it. Yeah,
Yeah,
I wondered how to say
thank
that
you.
properly. Anjana, beautiful. Does it mean something?
I believe it is teacher of gods. It's a Hindi name.
Hmm.
But my mom, I thought it was teacher of the gods, but now I feel like my mom told me no, that's actually incorrect. This is what it means. So don't take that.
Okay. I love it. All right.
Might be
So
wrong.
remember everyone to stay tuned for my little quick wrap up. And just going to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being on the show and um, hope to have many more times to connect.
Yes, thank you so much, Lucy. This was wonderful.
Bye. All right, here I am back again as a solo person. And I realize one of the reasons I do this podcast is I just love making new friends. And I really clicked with Ange. And if you want to be on my show, we can be new best friends too. So let me know if you have something you want to share with the world. I'm always looking for great guests. And you don't have to be all polished and have it all together. It's just a conversation about something. All right. So I loved hearing about how she started doing self-portraits because after the birth of her son and that her C-section and all of the things and COVID, she needed to do some art to deal with feelings. And then that unfolded into something that she does every Friday. And I liked that she has a little jar or something with words, a prop, a color, and a feeling, I think she said. And that is a start for her. I also appreciate that she has this method for being able to create with a step-by-step process. So she gets things kind of sketched out and then she plays. What else? She does 5-second interval timer rather than a self-timing and or running and setting that. That's brilliant. Like, duh. I don't know why I never thought of that. Um, she said her goal when she's doing it is to get 3 great shots. So not everything being great and even not anything being great. And we talked about some of the emotional issues of our own insecurities. And she shared that as you do this, you get detached and you see yourself as the subject of art. And then I asked her about how doing this benefits her business wise. And she said, number one, it shows people that she can be creative. And then she was surprised that there are people who see that work and want to be photographed in a storytelling way as well, including like beyond portrait of headshot kind of branding, but really exploring. Um, she said it's kind of like doing high school senior sessions with mature people. And she starts with a very sizable, decent investment so that she's not putting all this effort for people with a small investment and then giving them way too many things. So, anyway, that's my wrap up. Thank you for listening and thanks for checking out the Lucy Dumas, sorry, lucydumascoaching.com for more info. If you're also interested in maybe having me help you have a highly profitable business, I'd love to chat about that. All right. Ta-ta for now. Bye.